Hello and good afternoon, friends. Welcome once again to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, continuing from our previous lecture, which was on Animal Diversity-Non Chordata. Yesterday we talked about unicellular organisms, and today we would be stressing more on the multicellular organism. So proceeding our lecture forward, I would like to introduce first our guest, Dr. Renu Gupta. She is Associate Professor in Ramjas College, Department of Zoology. So I would like to welcome our guest and would ask to please proceed this lecture further from the point we have left yesterday.
Okay, thank you. So, hello viewers. Today again I am here to discuss or to talk more about the animal diversity. So, in yesterday's lecture, we have talked about the structure, form and function of simple forms of animals, that is the unicellular forms, and those organisms which belong to the group Protozoa. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about the multicellular organisms and the basic features of these multicellular organisms we have discussed yesterday only. The features like symmetry, the number of germ layers, the presence of xylem and the pattern of development. All these are the basic fundamental features on the basis of which one animal group can be differentiated from the other. So on these basis we can put the group's name like radiata, bilateria, acoelomates, pseudocoelomates, deuterostomia, protostomia and like on. So in today's lecture we are going to take up the different groups of animals one by one, but before doing that I would also like to stress one more point, that even in yesterday's discussion we talked about one basic feature which is responsible for the two broad categories of the animal kingdom.
There is some problem in the slide. Oh, yes.
Okay, अच्छा ये दिखा दूँ? हो गया कोई बात नहीं. So yesterday we talked about this, that animal kingdom can be divided into two main groups, non-chordata and chordata. Non-chordata and chordata differentiation is on the basis of the structure called notochord. Notochord is a solid rod of cells which is present in the embryonic condition and which is the precursor of the vertebral column. It means the non-chordates which do not have any notochord, they cannot have the vertebral column. And when the vertebral column is absent, these animals are also known as invertebrates. Whereas the second major group, which is called as the chordata, in which the notochord is present in the embryonic condition and it is going to form the vertebral column later on in the young one. So all those animals which are called as chordates, they are also known by the name of vertebrates. If we talk about the animal kingdom, or over more than 1 million species of animals, out of 1 million species we can say only 5% are representing the chordata, whereas 95% are representing the invertebrata. In today's lecture we are going to talk about, or we are going to explore the diversity of these invertebrate animals. The invertebrate animals, or the total number of species of invertebrates, can be grouped in around 30 phyla. And out of these 30 phyla, 8 phyla are considered as the major phyla because they have more than 90% of the invertebrate species. Rest of the phyla of invertebrata, they are considered as the minor phyla because they have got lesser representation of animal species. So in our discussions, we are going to concentrate, or we are going to focus on these 8 invertebrate phyla, which we are going to start today. In this case, if we explore the invertebrate diversity, there are various animals belonging to various groups, like they belong to the porifera, nidaria, ctenophora, platyhelminthes, nematoda, mollusca, arthropoda, echinodermata, and all these form the fascinating world of the animals. In today's lecture, first of all, we are starting with the first phylum, which is phylum Porifera, and the members are commonly known as the sponges. The word Porifera arises due to the fact that the members, which are called as sponges, and sponges bearing the pores. So Porifera actually means pore bearing, and it refers to the numerous pores and channels that are present on a sponge body. At this phylum include about 5,000 species, and almost all of which are marine. Only few freshwater species of sponges are found. Sponges occur all around the world, and they are found in the intertidal zones, they are found in the deep seas. The size of the sponges also vary. They can be as small as few millimeters, and many of the sponges are of giant size, may extending up to a length of 2 meters. This is a slide of a beautiful sponge, and the opening here is shown as which is called as the osculum, and rest of the body is perforated by number of pores which are called as the ostia. These are again different varieties of the sponges which make the ocean colorful. Sponges are the simplest multicellular organisms. When we say multicellular organisms, it means the cells here are present in number, but poriferans are different from the other groups of animals because they have a cellular level of organization. It means the cells have not formed the tissues in this particular phylum. So they have got the cellular level of organization, and their body possess different kinds of cells. As it is cellular level only, the germ layers which are characteristic of metazoans, they are also absent in phylum Porifera. Poriferan body is a mass of cells embedded in a gelatinous matrix, and this gelatinous matrix is called as the mesohyl. And this gelatinous matrix is generally supported by an endoskeleton which may be formed of structures called as spicules, and as well as this framework may be formed of the collagen fibers or maybe of the spongin fibers. These are the spicules of a glass sponge. Spicules form a characteristic feature of phylum Porifera. They are different in shape. They may be simple rod-like structure, needle-shaped. They may be a disc-like structure. They may be triradiated or may be hexagonal. So various forms of the spicules are present in case of the sponges. Spicules are again of different types on the basis of the structure. They may be made up of calcium carbonate or they may be made up of silica. The types of cells present in Porifera is varied. These cells are present in the mesohyl, and the mesohyl is having the spicules which is going to support the body of the sponges. The different cell types, the most specific one which is called as the choanocytes or commonly called as collar cells, they help the animal in filter feeding. One end of this collar cell is embedded in mesohyl, where the other end is going to protrude out. The choanocyte cell is having a long flagellum which is surrounded by a contractile collar. This flagellum moves out into the water where small particles are going to be trapped by this flagellum. The other cell type is called as the porocytes, and porocytes, as the name, it is having a kind of pore. So these porocytes are tubular cells, and they form tubes through the walls of sponges, and through these porocytes the water is going to enter into the central chamber. They have got other cells like pinacocytes, and these pinacocytes form a flat thin epithelium like layer and they cover the exterior and the interior surfaces of the sponges. The pinacocytes also have the ability to contract, and sometimes they are able to regulate the movement of water in and out of the sponge. The next type of cell is called as the arcucytes. They carry out many functions. They are digestive in function. They are able to phagocytize the particles and receive the particles for digestion from choanocytes. Choanocytes first going to capture the food particles, and then they are going to transfer it to the arcucytes. Arcucytes also secretory in nature. They may be called as sclerocytes if they secrete the spicules. If they secrete the spongin fibers, they are called as the spongocytes, and they are called as cholenocytes if they secrete the collagen. Sponges, we have also seen number of pictures also. They are sessile organisms. It means they are fixed to the substratum. They are not able to move, and only they depend on the water current which brings food and oxygen along with. Sponges generate their own flow of water, and for this they have got a unique system which is called as the canal system. Water enters through the many small pores which are called as the ostia and exit out through a bigger pore which is generally present at the anterior end and known by the name of osculum. The feeding of porifera, as I told you, that choanocytes and the arcucytes, these types of cells are involved in porifera feeding. The openings are connected by the series of canals which are lined by choanocytes, and through this the water current is going to be maintained and food particles are going to be captured. The choanocyte collar consists of the microvilli which are joined together by delicate microfibers which filter out tiny food particles. These tiny food particles are going to be later passed on to the arcucytes which are going to digest them. Few of the sponges are also carnivorous in nature and they are able to capture a small prey. The most specialized system of sponges, that is the canal system. Canal system by which the water is going to circulate in the body of the sponges. There are three major types of the canal system: asconoid canal system, syconoid type of system, and third is the leuconoid type of system. And these systems differ from each other in the complexity. Asconoid canal system, which is supposed to be the simplest type of system, water enters through the pores, through the ostia into a single large cavity which is called the spongocoel, and this spongocoel is lined by the choanocytes. Water enters through the ostia and exit out through the single large aperture, the osculum. The second type of canal system, syconoid canal system. In this, there is again a single spongocoel and osculum, but the difference is that the spongocoel is folded back to make radial canals. The wall you can see is folded in the form of the infoldings, and therefore it results in the formation of number of chambers. The third type of system, called as the leuconoid canal system, it is the most complex system and it is generally found in the sponges where they are of large size. Because here the leuconoid system involves a number of oscula. The body cavity of the sponges, that is spongocoel, is reduced, or we can say there is no spongocoel, and clusters of choanocyte lined chambers received water from the narrow incurrent canals and they drive water out through the excurrent canals which goes out through the osculum. So here in this picture we can see that there is no spongocoel, and in that place number of incurrent canals are there, which finally lead into the excurrent canal, and water is going to flow out through the osculum. The different grades of sponge canal complexity, it do not imply an evolutionary significance. It is simply the development of these canal system depending upon the need of the sponge. If a large size sponge is there, so they are going to have the leuconoid type of canal system, because it is going to increase the proportion of the area where water is going to circulate. Sponge reproduction, or the reproduction in porifera. Sponges reproduce both asexually and sexually. Sexually reproducing species are hermaphrodites. Hermaphrodites meaning both the sexes are present in the same individual. The sperms are going to be released into the water, and where it will be taken up by other sponges. The eggs are going to be fertilized by these sperms, and zygote is going to develop into a ciliated larva, and this larva settle down at the bottom and finally result in the form of a sponge. Asexual reproduction, it generally occurs by means of budding. A sponge can give rise to number of daughter sponges just by the process of budding. Sponges also have got a definite mechanism by which they are able to overcome the adverse conditions. They produce some kind of bodies which are called as gemmules, and these gemmules have an outer protective covering of the spicules, and internally it has a mass of archaeocytes. When the adverse conditions are over, the outer wall of gemmule is going to be removed, and archaeocytes are going to form the different kinds of cells of sponges and result in the formation of a new sponge. Sponges also possess a capacity which is called as the totipotency. The actual meaning of totipotency is that one type of cell has the capacity to produce other types of cells. These sponges, which belong to phylum porifera, they also have great power of regeneration. The small number of cells of a sponge can give rise to a new sponge because of the power of totipotency and because of the power of regeneration. We have seen in this case of porifera that these are the simple kind of multicellular animals and similar to the flagellated protozoans. So in yesterday's lecture also we talked about that it is supposed that metazoans have evolved from the colony of flagellated protozoans, and the presence of the different kind of cells or presence of collar cells in sponges also gives us an evidence that these cells resemble the unicellular flagellated protozoans, and it is the group which have later given rise to the multicellular animals. The sponges can be classified into three groups: class Calcarea, class Hexaactinellida, and class Demospongia. Class Calcarea, the sponges where the spicules are made up of calcium carbonate. They are generally smaller in size and the shape is generally tubular. These sponges having different types of canal system, may be asconoid, syconoid or lyconoid type of canal system. The Hexaactinellida sponges, which are commonly known as glass sponges, the skeleton is made of silica. The spicules are siliceous in nature and they are generally bound in a glass-like network. Body of Hexaactinellids consists of a single syncytial tissue. The number of nuclei are present and there is no definite division in the cells. Hexaactinellida the beautiful sponges, sometimes called as the Venus flower basket. The third group is the demospongy. It includes about 80% of the species of freshwater sponges. The spicules can be made up of silica. To support these spicules, the spongin fibers are also present, and generally the members are very large, and therefore they possess the leuconoid type of canal system. This group also includes the bath sponges, in which the spicules are absent. These are the different types of sponges. We can see that they are very large size, they may be elongated, or they may be ball-like sponges. After talking about this particular group of multicellular organisms, the phylum Porifera, we proceed on to the next group of animals, which is phylum Nidaria, and the members commonly known as hydra, jellyfish, corals, and sea anemones. Phylum Nidaria is different from the other phyla of invertebrates, as they show radial symmetry. And one more related phylum is phylum Ctenophora. Though the representatives of phylum Ctenophora are few in number, commonly known as comb jellies, but they, along with the phylum Nidaria, show the radial symmetry. So they can be placed under the group Radiata. If we talk about the number of germ layers, they have only 2 germ layers, ectoderm, which is present on the outer side, and inner endoderm, and therefore they are called as the diploblastic animals. Phylum Nidaria is one of the oldest group. It has large representation, and its fossil history backs through 700 million years ago. The characteristic feature, radial symmetry, we have already talked. They have got the body cavity, which is called as the gastrovascular cavity. Because there is no definite alimentary canal, the space between the outer ectoderm and inner gastrodermis is called as the gastrovascular cavity. They have got a tissue level of organization, and the name Nidaria have come from a special type of cells which are called as cnidocytes, and these cnidocytes also called as the stinging cells, and these are generally providing defense to the animals. Cnidarians are present in different kind of environment. Many of them are freshwater, but most of them are marine in nature. They can be of the sessile type, it means the attached type, or they may be of the free swimming types like the jellyfishes. The cnidarians also show one very interesting feature, which is called as the polymorphism. Polymorphism means the individuals of a particular species can exist in different forms. They appear different externally, and the two main different forms which exist are called as the polyp form and the medusa form. And in many of the cnidarians, there is an alternation of polyp and the medusa form, and the presence of polyp and medusa forms the basis for the classification of phylum Nidaria. In the cnidarians, there is a sac. The body is enclosing a large size sac, which is called as the gastrovascular cavity, and this cavity has a single opening which functions both as mouth and anus. Phylum Nidaria also has the forms which live singly, and many of them are the colonial forms, which form large colonies, and when they are present in colonies, they generally show polymorphism, because the polymorphism meaning the individuals of different kind of a single species, and these individuals, some of the individuals may be responsible for feeding, some of the individuals may be responsible for reproduction, some may be responsible for the defense. If they help the animal in feeding, they are called as dactylozoids. If they help the animal in reproduction, they are called as gonozoids. And for defense, generally elongated thread-like zooids are there, which are called as dactylozoids. About the body wall, as I told you, only two germ layers are there. The outermost is called as the epidermis and the inner one is called as the gastrodermis. And in between these two layers, there is a jelly-like structure which is filling the gap between the two layers, and this jelly-like structure is called as the mesoglia. The epidermal layer contains several types of cells, and out of which the nidoblasts are characteristic of the phylum Nidaria. These nidoblasts also help the cnidarians in feeding. Cnidarians are generally carnivores and they generally use their tentacles to capture the small sized prey. So the nidocyte is having a sac-like structure in which a tube is present in the coiled form. Whenever any prey comes near them, they are going to uncoil the tube. It is going to spring out of the sac-like structure and is going to entangle the prey, which is finally transferred towards the mouth. The extracellular digestion takes place in the gastrovascular cavity. They have got a diffuse kind of nervous system. The nerve cells form a kind of nerve net in the epidermis as well as in the gastrodermis. There is no concentration of nerve cells to form the central nervous system. Reproduction, both the modes of reproduction are there. They can reproduce asexually, and when they reproduce asexually, it may be by budding or it may be by fission. The sexual mode of reproduction is generally performed by the medusa. A zygote is being formed by the fusion of the sperm and ova, and after the fertilization, the zygote gives rise to the planula larva, which is a kind of free swimming larva, and it later on gives rise to the polyp form, and if the polyp form is absent, it again gives rise to the medusa form. The phylum Nidaria, the beautiful animals present in this, are divided into four major groups or four major classes. Class Hydrozoa, Scyphozoa, Cubozoa and Anthozoa. The members of class Hydrozoa are Hydra, Obelia, and one very interesting example is Portuguese men of war, and the scientific name for this is Physalia. The members of class Hydrozoa are mostly marine. Few of them live in fresh water, and both polyp and medusa stages are present. When polyp stage is generally colonial. The class Scyphozoa, the jellies which are called on the other members are the sea nettles. So the jellyfishes, the name do denote fishes but not belonging to the fishes, they belong to Nidaria. So the jellyfishes, characteristic of the marine world, very beautiful in size, keep floating in water, and they can be quite small, but many of them can be as large as 2 meter in diameter. And in case of Scyphozoa, the polyp stage is reduced and the jellyfishes represent the medusa stage or the free floating stage. The Cubozoa, the third class, which are called as the box jellies, they have got a box shaped medusa, and the fourth class, the Anthozoa, is represented by sea anemones and the corals. So these sea anemones and corals, all of them are marine. Medusa stage is completely absent. They represent only the polyp form, and most of them are sessile and colonial. Hydrozoans, variable in form, represented by Hydra and Obelia, and they alternate between the two forms, polyp form giving rise to medusa and medusa form giving rise to polyp stage. These are the different varieties of the hydra, and even showing the process of budding, where the parent hydra can give rise to number of daughter hydra simply by the process of budding. Here the hydra is being shown eating a daphnia. So to capture a daphnia, it uses its tentacles and the specialized cells, the nidoblasts. These are the beautiful medusa which are present in the class Hydrozoa. They have got special sense organs like the stetocyst, which is responsible for maintaining the equilibrium of the animal. This is the medusa form of present in the Hydrozoa. Medusa form is generally umbrella shaped and the margin is covered over by the number of tentacles. Mouth is present in the center. One of the member which I told you, the very interesting one, that is called as the Portuguese man of war. This Portuguese man of war, it was called as Portuguese man of war because during the time of Second World War, the soldiers used to see this floating on the layer on the sea water. So they mistook it as some kind of army, but it was the float of the Portuguese men of war, which is a kind of zooid, and this pneumatophore is filled with gas and which helps the animal in floating. The other zooids which are suspended deep inside the water, they are of different types, dactylozoids, gonozoids, or the other type of structures responsible for maintaining the colony. The second class is the class Scyphozoa, to which belongs the jellyfishes. They are named as jellyfishes because in this the middle layer present between ectoderm and gastrodermis, that is the mesoglia, which is a gelatinous kind of structure that is very thick in case of jellyfishes, and therefore they appear to be transparent structures and therefore named as the jellyfishes. Appear to be because they are of the medusa shape, medusa form. The structure is bell shaped. They generally have 4 frilly arms which arise from the center, and these arms help the animal in capturing and ingestion of the prey. The class Scyphozoa, they have got planular larvae during their development, and they produce the saucer-like buds which are called as ephyrae, and they are produced by a process of budding, and this process of budding is called as strobilation. Because of the strobilation, the saucer-like structures are going to be budded off from the body, and they later give rise to the adult jellyfishes. The world of jellyfishes is beautiful, and they make the world colorful and very interesting. Many of them very large size, reaching up to a diameter of 1 meter or 2 meter, varied in color and floating just like the umbrellas. The third class is Cubozoa, which have only few representatives, and members are called as box jellies. The medusa in this case is in the shape of a box and has got complex size. The polyps are generally very small and they develop directly into the medusa. Many times they pose a threat to the human beings which are going to visit the sea. The last class in phylum Nidaria is class Anthozoa, and to this belongs the corals and sea anemones. And the special feature is they occur only in the polyp stage and there is no medusa stage. All the members are marine. They may be occurring singly or they may be present in the form of a colony. They are generally found around the coast, all around the world, and these sea anemones have got a disc at the bottom which is called as the pedal disc, by which they are attached to the rocks. These sea anemones generally feed on fishes or any other food of suitable size. At the interior end, there is an oral disc which is having large number of tentacles. When the sea anemone move from one place to other, they dislodge their pedal disc and simply swims away to another place and get again attached by means of the pedal disc. The tentacles, which are arranged around the central mouth, and the gastrovascular cavity is divided into 6 radial chambers. The other members of this particular class are called as the corals. The corals are again of varied type, varied shapes, varied colors. So hexacorallian corals, they are the true corals or called as the stony corals. These corals generally live in a skeleton which is made up of calcium carbonate, and this skeleton is secreted by the polyps of these corals. In the hexacorallian corals, the gastrovascular cavity is again divided in the multiples of 6, and calcium carbonate skeleton is secreted by the living tissue. In the hexacorallian corals, the polyps generally remain inside the skeleton. They remain retracted during the daytime. But whenever they want to capture, they become active at night. The polyps expand out of their skeleton. The other category is of octocorallian corals, and they have got 8 pinnate tentacles, and the number of septa in the gastrovascular cavity is 8. So therefore, if the number of septa is 6, they are called as hexacorallian corals, and if number of septa are 8, they are called as octocorallian corals. The beautiful sea fens, sea pens and sea pansies also belong to this group. These corals generally found places in our houses as the pieces of decoration. Many of the corals are also used in the manufacturing of the jewelry. The corals form huge masses in oceans which are suitable for their growth, and these huge masses are called as the coral reefs. And coral reefs are supposed to be the most productive and diverse type of ecosystem on earth. As corals are forming the skeleton, these skeletons are going to deposit at one place, and they provide a suitable place for the growth or for the living of other animals like small fishes, or they may be suitable for the growth of the different types of algae, and the other animals get attached to the coral reefs. So it becomes a diverse kind of ecosystem. These octocorallian corals and many of the hydrozoans, they also contribute calcium carbonate for the formation of the coral reefs. Depending upon the structure, the reefs are divided into different types called as the fringing reef, barrier reef. The most famous example of the barrier reef is the Great Barrier Reef present in Australia. This reef runs parallel to the shore, and it extends to a length of 2000 kilometers in Australia. The third type of reef is called as the atoll reef, which generally encircle a lagoon. Patch reefs are scattered. These are small patches of the coral reefs which remain scattered. The related phylum to the phylum nidaria is phylum ctenophora, as it is a small phylum, and these are commonly called as the comb jellies. They are different from the nidaria because they do not have the nematocyst. They also show tissue level of organization. Most of them are the free swimming, and they have special structures called as the ciliated comb plates, which are the typical structures or characteristic of all the ctenophores. Ctenophores are bioluminescent. It means they are able to produce light and generally they have got a sense organ called as statocyst. So here we have seen the variety of the cnidarians, the variety of the sea anemones, which appear like the beautiful flowers or the plants in our gardens. Here we find the fishes finding the place among the sea anemones, maybe of very large size like giant sea anemone, beautifully colored rosy sea anemone. The corals, large size resembling a brain called as brain coral. It may be an elongated branch type of coral or resembling a horn called as elk horn coral, even resembling a cabbage called as cabbage coral. So here are the flower corals, feather coral, and I think everyone can mistook it as a plant having number of branches and covered with beautiful flowers, but undoubtedly it is a Gorgonian fan coral. So here we have visited the beautiful world of the cnidarians, phylum Nidaria and the phylum Ctenophora, where we can see the giant jelly, where even the human being appears to be small in front of this jellyfish. Now we can come to the next phylum in this series, that is phylum Platyhelminthes. Phylum Platyhelminthes, they are generally supposed to be the animals which are responsible for causing many diseases in vertebrate animals. The general feature for these platyhelminths is cephalization. The meaning of cephalization, the development of head. These are generally sessile animals, and these animals have got a tendency to move towards one direction. So the anterior end of the animal generally has the concentration of the sense organs, and this concentration of sense organ result in the development of the head. These animals show bilateral symmetry. There are three classes of platyhelminthes. Class Turbellaria, which include mostly the free-living flatworms, and these free-living flatworms can be found in fresh water as well as in marine water. The examples for them is the planaria and the polycladids. The second class is called as the nematoda, and the members are called as the flukes. All of us are familiar with the liver fluke, or called as the fasciola hepatica, which is responsible for causing many diseases. One of the example is schistosoma, which causes schistosomiasis in human beings. The third class is cystoda, and the members are generally called as the tapeworms, and all the tapeworms are parasitic in nature. If we talk about the general characters of the phylum Platyhelminthes, they show bilateral symmetry, and they belong to the group called as acoelomata. Yesterday also we talked about the acoelomates. Acoelomates meaning the animals without a coelom. Here the body cavity is completely filled with parenchyma. In this case, the specialized organs are being formed, and therefore platyhelminths show organ system level of organization. They are also called as the protostomes. On the basis of the pattern of development, they show a spiral and determinate pattern of cleavage. The mesoderm is well defined. They are triploblastic. They have got very much specialized excretory system, and this excretory system is made up of a particular kind of cells called as flame cells. The parenchyma is filling up the gap between the ectoderm and the endoderm. The size of the flatworms may be small or may be very small, like in few millimeters, and many of them very large, extending up to meters in length. The members of the first class, that is the turbellarians, they are generally the free living forms, whereas the flukes and the tapeworms, all of them are parasitic in nature. In this case, the excretion being performed by the flame cells, and these flame cells have got a cup-like structure in which a number of flagella are present, and these flagella keep on moving or keep on flickering just like a flame, and therefore the name has been given to the flame cells. Because of the movement of the flagella, the waste material is going to be collected. It will be passed into the cup of the flame cell, and where it is going to be filtered, and the waste is going to be removed from the body. The nervous system is resembling that of the nidarians. They have got a simple network of the nerve cells present in the epidermis. The sense organs are present, and particularly in the case of flatworms, the ocelli, or we can say the simple eyes, are present, which are present at the anterior end, and they are light sensitive. These platyhelminthes, as I told you, can be divided into 4 classes: Turbellaria, Monogenia, Nematoda, and Cystoda. They are, as I told you, living in marine, freshwater, or the terrestrial habitats. Body is generally flattened. The best known example of the flatworm is the planaria. This planaria is also an interesting animal because it has great power of regeneration. The other animals, like the flukes and the tapeworms, are generally categorized as monogenian parasites or the digenian parasites. Okay, so monogenian parasites and digenian parasites. Monogenian, if the parasite is going to pass its life cycle in a single host, then it is called as monogenian. But if the life cycle is going to be passed into 2 hosts, then it is called as a digenian parasite. In a digenian parasite,
you're continuously helping our students to know more about this very topic, and I hope that all these students might be getting a benefit of this lecture. We especially thanks all the students for watching us, and I hope you might have queries, and Dr. Renu Gupta is continuously stressing on the point so that you could be getting into the concepts. Yes, ma'am, proceeding further with the lecture.
So there are these parasites which are placed as the monogenian parasites or digenian parasites. Here is an example of the digenian parasite where 2 hosts are there. One is a snail and second is the human being. The monogenous generally occurring in water, and they pass their life cycle as the parasites of fishes. The tapeworms, as we know, they are the parasites of the human beings and many other vertebrate animals. So these tapeworm, the shape resembling a tape. At the anterior end, there is a head-like structure which is called as the scolex, and this scolex is provided with rings or the circles of the hooks by which they get attached to the alimentary canal of the host. The rest of the body appears to be a flattened tape-like structure and made up of number of segments, and these segments are called as the proglottids. These proglottids are of 3 types. Just after the scolex, they are called as the immature proglottids. After that comes the mature proglottids, and at the posterior end there are the gravid proglottids. These gravid proglottids are full of eggs. So when these animals, these tapeworms, are present in the alimentary canal of vertebrates, the gravid proglottids, which are full of the mature eggs, they are going to be cut off from the main body of the tapeworm, and they pass out along with the feces of the vertebrate. When they pass out along with the feces, they are going to contaminate the surrounding soil if defecation is being done in the open, as is the case in our villages. So when the soil gets contaminated with these eggs which are present in the gravid proglottids, and this soil, if going to be taken up by the pigs which roam about there, these gravid proglottids along with the eggs, or we can say the eggs, are going to reach the body of the pig. In the body of the pig, the young ones, which is in the form of a larva called as the hexacanth larva, come out of it and they get attached with the muscles of the pig. If the pig meat, which is called as the pork, is going to be taken without cooking properly, so uncooked pork is being taken by the human beings, again these larval forms are going to reach the human body, where they will develop into a fully mature larva, and it is going to cause lot of medical problems in the human beings. The next related phylum, or we can say again a phylum having the animals which are parasitizing lot of vertebrates. The phylum is named as the phylum Nematoda. This phylum Nematoda, the members called as the roundworms, they are non-segmented and their body is covered over by a tough cuticle. The members of platyhelminthes, they are called as acoelomates, but nematodes are different from them as they are pseudocoelomates. The body cavity is a false cavity and it is internally not lined by the mesoderm. Nematodes are found in most aquatic habitats, in the soil, moist tissues of plant, in the body fluid of tissues or the animals. Nematodes even parasitize the plants. The body is cylindrical. I told you it is unsegmented, and it is generally covered by a tough covering which is called as the cuticle. And this cuticle protects the animal from the digestive secretions of the human being when it is present in the alimentary canal of the human being. They are triploblastic, they show bilateral symmetry, the size varies, they may be minute or they may be quite elongated, may be reaching a size of 8 to 10 inches. The body covering is called as the cuticle, they don't have any cilia, and the body cavity is the pseudocoelom. These nematodes, they have got the muscle layers which include only the longitudinal fibers. They have got a complete digestive system. Circulatory and respiratory systems are generally absent. As these animals pass their life inside the body of the host, the circulatory system is absent and they don't have specific organs for respiration. The excretory system also consists of one or more gland cells which open to the exterior through a pore canal. The circular nerve ring is present, which represents the nervous system, and it also gives one dorsal nerve cord and the other ventral nerve cord. Sense organs are present in the form of ciliated pits. They are generally dioecious. It means male and females are separate. Male, they show sexual dimorphism. It means the male can be differentiated from the female just by looking at the external features. Male is smaller than the female, and generally the tip of the male is curved while that of the female tip, the posterior tip, is straight. They show internal fertilization, and many of them show the direct development where there is no larval stage, while other forms of the nematodes show a complicated type of life history. This is the common roundworm known by the name of Ascaris lumbricoides. So here we can see the difference between the male and female. The posterior tip of the female is straight, while that of the male is curved like a comma. Generally, the Ascaris is present in large number in the human intestine and sometimes result in the blocking of the intestine. Here, this is an example of the hookworm, which by means of the specialized structures present in the form get attached to the intestine of the animals. This is a dog hookworm which parasitizes the dogs. This is the trichinella, which causes trichinosis and may reach even the eye of the human beings. The other examples of the parasitic nematodes, like roundworm completely obstructing the alimentary canal. There are number of hookworms present in the alimentary canal. Then many of the worms may reach the heart through the circulatory system, and you can imagine how deadly it can be. These are the guinea worms which may enter the body through the skin. There are pinworms also which enter the body, they pierce through the skin and enter the body. This is a case of elephantiasis, which is caused by the filarial worm. This filarial worm is being spread by the mosquitoes, and this generally reaches the human beings by the bite of mosquito, and it obstructs the lymphatic vessels. And by the obstruction of the lymphatic vessels, generally in the legs or in the scrotal region, there is inflammation of all these regions, and this results in large size foot, and many times this disease is called as the elephant foot disease. So everyone can see how painful it is if any kind of nematode which is going to cause a disease, it is going to parasitize the human being or going to parasitize the other kind of animals, and may result in economic losses if it is going to parasitize the plants. So this word of phylum nematoda is diverse, though important economically, but causing more harm rather than any advantage. So in the coming lectures, we are going to focus on the other invertebrate phyla like Annelida, Mollusca, Arthropoda and Echinodermata.
Definitely, ma'am. In future lectures also, we are going to learn more from you. Thank you so very much for giving such a successful lecture, and I hope all the students who might have watched or will be watching on YouTube will be getting benefit from this particular lecture. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you, Deepika.
Thank you.